Hey, today is the 13th of August of 2020. Going out on a short day hike on the Pine Mountain Trail for about 3 hours with about a 25-pound pack. And the purpose of this trip is to keep working my legs as I prepare for a NOLS Rocky Mountain Outdoor Educator course that starts on the 30th of August of 2020. And so I've got my new boots, and I've been running in them, and I've been hiking down at West Point Dam, up and down the hills. And the Pine Mountain Trail is not necessarily challenging in steepness, but it has rocks and roots and so forth. So that's the reason I'm going out on this trail today, is mainly just to get some endurance and just to keep forcing my feet to have to balance on rocks and roots. It's actually a pretty nice day out. It rained earlier at home. It's supposed to have thunderstorms, but right now it's clear skies. And no one's out here, of course, because it's a Thursday. And it's a nice trail. Pine Mountain Trail is good for training your legs, especially on the rocks and roots. It's very similar in as far as rocks and roots and greenery and plants and so forth as the Appalachian Trail. But the Appalachian Trail is much steeper and more difficult. But nevertheless, Pine Mountain Trail is 30 minutes away versus 3 hours away. Making my way along the Pine Mountain Trail today as I prepare for my NOLS Outdoor Educator course in the Rocky Mountains of Wyoming. And these clouds are building pretty fast. Okay, on Pine Mountain Trail, just hit mile marker 5. Getting a little over 2.5 miles an hour, and just only a 25-pound pack. With food and water, tent, I got everything I need. If something happened, I had to stay out of here. Always anticipating and trying to mitigate the risk. Anyway, the biggest risk today is the weather. Thunderstorms are building. I can feel the breeze picking up. So I am going to secure my camera in a plastic bag. Take some more water and eat a protein carb kind of bar. And then I'll be out of here. Completely wet just from sweat. It is August and really sweaty out here, but that's what it takes to try to get your legs and feet ready for hiking in the Rockies. See you later. So I got a little thunderstorm over that way as I traversed up here on top of this ridge, and I'm almost to the 3-mile point remaining on this 10-mile hike. And so this thunderstorm is building on either side of me, but I got no choice but to keep going and not expose myself. Okay, 3 miles to go on this 10-mile hike, and thunderstorm is approaching this area. Not sure if it's going to hit me or not, but I'm on the back side of the ridge now versus the other side, so perhaps it's a stationary little storm, but it could build overhead, which there are clouds and it's getting a little dark, but we'll see. But just have to keep pressing. For the second time, I just spooked a white-tailed deer. Just popped up and started running off. But everything seems to be going pretty good, except for the thunderstorm that's really nearby. But I trust God to protect me. You have to keep pressing through life, through the storms, and expect God to protect you. I think it's the same thing with COVID. You just keep pressing. You do the best you can to mitigate the threat, and then you don't worry about it. You just can't. Can't let it stagnate you or hold you back. Just have to keep pressing. and making smart decisions and good planning and anticipate all the issues. I'm anticipating getting wet. I've already secured my pack and my camera, and I've only got 2.5 miles to go. Takes me 45 minutes or so to get to the car. The life of the thunderstorm is about 30 minutes, so it is a high chance that I'll get rained on. So, gotta keep moving. That would be thunder echoing across the valley. It is a beautiful sound, no doubt. In nature, even at its worst, I mean, I don't even think it's thunderstorms are bad. I mean, they're beautiful. How they form and to the mature stage, and just the power, and they provide rain and clean the air, and they're just wonderful to look at. There are processes that you do, and you have to slow down and do the process. And if you hurry, then you can make errors and mistakes and get injured and so forth. Yes, a thunderstorm's high risk, but so is tripping and falling, trying to rush when I can't beat the thunderstorm. I'm going to have to just keep walking through it. Now, I just crossed over a big tree that had fallen. It was a dead tree. So as I hike along and if the thunderstorm hits, I'm going to be looking at the near rocks like I did in the F-16, you know, that I don't step on a rock or root that's going to twist my ankle. And slowing down and just doing the process will reduce that likelihood, because if you get hurt out here, now you're stuck in the storm versus just moving through as the storm passes. And same thing in life. You don't just stop and let the storm consume you. You keep going, and that's the fastest way through the storm. Fastest way is to keep going and doing the process and not hurrying, not rushing the process, but trusting the process so that you can be successful in the long run. And while you're doing the process, yes, you'll walk through some storms, but you do the near rocks and then you do the far rocks. Far rocks on a trail, well, you're kind of seeing what's up ahead. You kind of do a little planning, like if there's a big boulder you got to go over. Obviously, you got to kind of start thinking about that. But right now the trail is pretty soft, and I'm looking ahead to see, you know, if there's any snakes. I'm looking ahead to see if there's any rocks or roots that I'm gonna have to go through or over. And then if the storm hits and the winds pick up, I'm worried about trees falling or limbs falling and hitting me. So you got to keep your head up and add a third step to the process, near rocks, far rocks, and up above rocks, which could be limbs or trees. Got some light rain starting as I pass the Dead Pine campsite. That's a really nice name for a campsite. I'm about to cross over a little creek down here too. So I'm down kind of in a little valley where it gets kind of dark, and there's some overgrown bushes and stuff along the creek. Kind of like a laurel, mountain laurel kind of bush. Not sure what it is. Not sure if mountain laurel is on the Pine Mountain Trail. One thing's for sure, there's a dead pine. Lots of dead pines and a dead pine campsite. So this stuff looks like laurel. It's not laurel. I hate that on the Appalachian Trail because that means you're down in the nasty areas where there's snakes and mosquitoes, but there's usually a lot of shade. You can hear the rain. Crossing over a little creek or branch, whatever you want to call it. Everything on the Pine Mountain Trail is marked with a blue slash, unlike the Appalachian Trail, which is a white slash. Rain a little bit harder, but you don't really feel the rain because the trees are so thick. Such a big canopy overhead. Almost to the 2-mile marker. Coming up here. So 2 more miles to my car. Starting to see some red leaves falling off the trees. 2-mile marker. So fall's approaching. Now we're getting some pretty good rain. Like I said, you just keep going. It's cold rain, it feels good. I'm already soaking wet from sweat. I did this on the Appalachian Trail many times. Walking through a thunderstorm, got wet. And because I wore merino wool, I stayed warm when I was wet. And it dried overnight in my sleeping bag with me. So merino wool is the key to staying dry. I'm wearing merino wool pants, shirt, socks, sock liner, underwear, merino wool. Born in nature. And I prefer Icebreaker over any other brand. Icebreaker is the shirt I'm wearing today. Right now, this shirt, merino wool, I bought it 5 years ago. These pants are merino wool blend. Yeah, they're not the prettiest pants in the world, but they're 5 years old and just as good as they were when I bought them. The smell of the rain is also just something that's refreshing. And I would expect that most animals are hunkering down, to include reptiles like snakes and so forth, because it's cold droplets, probably something that's not very comfortable for them, not very comfortable. And just a walk in the rain. Just a walk in the rain in the woods. The storm has pretty much dissipated. The rain just stopped and still a little bit of thunder. But for the most part, the storm has dissipated and it's pretty much over. Maybe a light drizzle. After it rains, everything gets really calm. think I spoke too soon, because that was like ear splitting. I had to reach in my pocket, pull out my phone, get it going, go to the camera, and start videoing, and it was still thundering. It was that long of a thunder, but it was one of those kind of knock you off your feet kind of thunder. So yeah, it gets calm after the storm, but always be prepared, anticipating there's always one last little whiplash. It keeps popping off. I'm almost to the road, crossing the road. Probably heard a car go by. So I don't even think it rained here. Didn't even rain in this part. So, crossing a road here, approaching the 1 mile point. It didn't even rain here. Storm is still overhead over this way. Lightning's in the distance. So, it's behind me. That's the key. Storm is behind me, and it hadn't rained here, so it must be moving away from where my present position is now. Birds are starting to chirp. Usually when the birds are chirping, they know better than us, or me, about the weather. I mean, the sun's out now, over this way. Sun's there, birds are chirping. Storm is moving in the opposite direction. Still thundering, not a threat, but these rocks are a threat, and worrying about the weather will only make me trip and fall. Because the process is near rocks, far rocks, and there's some more rocks coming up. They're not that big of a deal on this trail. On the Appalachian Trail, which is a lot steeper, these become an issue because you can fall and go tumbling down some pretty steep off-trail areas, kind of like over that way. But anyway, the process is what your focus is. You know, I can talk about attention, concentration, and focus, because it starts, you gotta have attention for where you are, plus or minus about 60 degrees on the trail. And then you narrow things down to basically the trail itself and just the edges. But then as you approach rocks, now your focus becomes the rocks themselves, that you don't want to step on certain rocks. So your focusing requires more energy. You have to slow down, make sure your steps are proper. Because if you're paying attention to the wrong thing, meaning that you expand your attention span, then you're not focusing. So you're kind of more concentrating and focusing. Concentrating meaning plus or minus 30 degrees off trail, and then focusing plus or minus 10 degrees of each step, so that you can make the right decision. But now it's starting to flatten out, smooth out. Now you can have more, you can pay attention to plus or minus 60 degrees. And that's how we ran the radar in the F-16. And that's how we do approaches as well in an airliner or a jet to a runway. You start out at the final approach fix, and as you get closer to the runway, now you're concentrating, and then at the last few moments you're focusing on the landing. You're not worried about plus or minus 60 or plus or minus 30. You're worried right there in front of you as you touch down in the touchdown zone.
And it's the same thing when shooting the gun in an F-16, if you're strafing or if you're in a dogfight. Even the dogfighting, the gun reticle, if you want to call it, it's called the Eags gun sight. It's an expanding envelope gun sight, and it basically funnels you in from like an attention span that's wide to a more narrow concentration to a focus where you put the pipper on the other aircraft and pull the trigger and shoot the gun and kill them. So it's the same thing with shooting a bow and arrow. The bow is pretty much like plus or minus 60, and then you start concentrating as you pull it up to shoot it, and then you're taking a deep breath and you're pulling back with an arrow. You're pulling back and you're focusing at that point and releasing. So that's the same thing I do on the trail. That's my process. Of course, right now I'm videoing, so I'm not doing a very good job of all that as I try to explain it. But this is a pretty low threat area, so I figure I can video. But you do the process and you don't worry about the performance. Performance is a reflection of the process. And if you want your performance to be better, then you have to change your process. So you have to step up the pace. So this is some soft. And if I'm feeling like I'm going too slow, then this is where I can make up time by picking up the pace here on this soft pine straw. But I'm not worried about, you can't worry necessarily about the performance you're getting, because then you're not doing the process, you're worrying about the performance. So if you stay in the moment or ahead of the moment, executing ahead of the moment with high situational awareness, knowing the relevant past applied to the present so that you can render the desired future, and your performance reflects your process, and your final outcome reflects the whole all your processes bound together. And you don't worry about the outcome itself. That's the scoreboard. You just focus on doing the process to the best of your ability. And when you hit a performance milestone, like a mile marker, then you check to see how your performance is. And if your performance is not what you want it to be, if you're not satisfied with it, then you need to make a change. You need to adjust the process. And sometimes you can't adjust the process any more than what you're doing. So you have to just accept that that's what you're going to get for that day based on those conditions, because whatever the weather is, a lot of times slows things down. Wind, blisters, injury, your teammates, someone has an issue with equipment. So you have to plan on having these little contingencies and add additional time so that you're not caught out hiking with the sun down, because hiking in the dark is a great way to get lost. And that's where you need to make sure you have good illumination. Anyway, those are my thoughts here on the Pine Mountain Trail on the 13th of August of 2020. This is the same kind of flowers you see on the Appalachian Trail during this time of year. We're approaching the trailhead, and so basically 10 miles in 4 hours, 2.5 miles a minute, including stopping and taking pictures and messing with my camera and talking on the phone to Caroline. So almost there at the trailhead, and that will complete 10 more miles in my preparation for my NOLS Rocky Mountain Outdoor Educator program, which is going to be much tougher than hiking on the Pine Mountain Trail, but nevertheless, it is hiking.